10.2. Put that a little bit on the high side, didn't I? Starts to take into account the whole equation. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And this is when you start realizing you not only have the a that changes how wide or skinny it is, and the c that moves it up and down, you're now going to have the b that moves it side to side. And when you do that, all of the others, the x-axis has been the axis of symmetry, but because you can now move it side to side, the axis of symmetry is now going to change, and it's not necessarily going to be that y-axis. But we can determine it using an equation, which is negative b over 2a. And this is the axis of symmetry because a parabola is symmetric. And it's divided into two equal parts. So if I have this equation, for example, y equals negative x squared plus 2x plus 1. I, first of all, want to find what is my axis of symmetry so that I can graph my parabola. And this is very important. There are several questions like this on the test. You want to make sure you know how to do this. So first I find x equals negative b over 2a. And here my b is 2. So negative 2 over 2 times a is negative 1. So I'm going to get negative 2 over negative 2, which is positive 1. So my axis of symmetry is actually going to be at x equals 1. So I'm going to start drawing this on the side while I work out the math on the left. And so x equals 1 is going to be my axis of symmetry. That's the first thing, and it's the most important thing really to draw the parabola. It defines it's going to be on either side of that. The other thing I notice here, this tells me it's going to be upside down or a reflection. So I know it's going to point down. Once I've found the axis of symmetry, I need to find the vertex. And the vertex, when I found the axis of symmetry, I already have the x portion of the vertex, which is going to be on this axis. All I need to now do is find the y. Well, that's easy. I just substitute it into my equation. So I'm going to take my equation y equals negative, and I put in 1 for x, 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 1. And when I do that, I get a y of negative 1 squared is negative 1 plus 3 equals 2. So my vertex is going to be 1, 2. Because this is important, I'm going to underline it, and this was my axis of symmetry. And so here's my vertex, the point 1, 2. And I'm going to label it. You've got to label it on the test. Did you guys hear me? You have to label it if you want credit. All right, I've now labeled my vertex. Now I just have to find some more points. All right, well, what points do I have? I'm going to do, because I've not let myself enough room, I'm going to make a sideways table instead of an up and down table. Well, easiest to try 0, right? 0 squared plus 2 times 0 is 1, which is my x-intercept. 0, 1. Remember, because of symmetry, it's very likely the next point will be at 2, 1. Likely, certain, but we're still going to try it out just to confirm. Negative 2 squared is going to make it, 2 squared is 4, and the negative is negative 4, plus 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is going to give me 1, and that, in fact, is the next point. And last, I'm going to try negative 1, because it looks like it's an easy one. Negative 1 squared is 1. I'll make that negative, so it's a negative 1, plus 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So I have negative 1 plus negative 2 is negative 3, plus 1 is negative 2. And that looks like it fits really well where it should belong. And if that's correct, this point right here, 3, should also give me negative 2. And we're going to see if that works out that way. 3 squared is 9, negative 9 plus 2 times 3 is 6, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2, and yes, in fact, that's my last point. 3, negative 2. And I now have my full parabola that fits with this equation. That is how you should model and do the problems in 10.2. And it covers problems 4, 5, and 6 on the test, so you need to know how to do that. I'm now going to move to 10.3, which is called solving by graphing. You only need to do 11 and 13, and really you can just simply do what is here. So I am actually going to tell you that this, what I just showed you now, that this methodology will also work for 10.3. So I'm going to label it here. You only need to do the odds for homework. You don't need to do all the evens. Okay, let's move to 10.4. Now we've now solved by graphing and we've learned how to factor. 10.4 is solving using square roots. Okay, so this should cover, and this is a little bit more. The others, yes, you need to do the evens. Here I'm going to do, sorry, the odds. Here I'm going to do a few more of the evens with you. And I'm just going to jump right in instead of getting to the theory with number 14. 6x squared minus 54 equals 0. And 16. G squared plus 11 equals 24. And 18. 2 times a plus 7 squared equals 34. All right, here's where I want you to hit pause. I want you to solve these, and then I want you to come back and watch me solve them. Because if I solve it all for you in front of you, you won't get the full benefit. So press pause and come back in a minute. Okay, let's go through them. 6x squared, I add 54 to both sides, equals 54. I divide both sides by 4. I get 9. Please, please remember to take the positive and negative square roots. So many of you guys lost points on this quiz because you just forgot to put a minus as well as the plus in front. Please don't forget. Number 16 is similar. We're going to look at that. We see g squared plus 11 equals 24. We're going to subtract 11 from both sides and end up with 24 minus 11 is 13. We take the square root of both sides, plus or minus the square root of 13, and we end up with 3 plus or minus 3.61. Please have a calculator with you on this test. Put that square root in and get the actual value. Okay, so that's number 16. Number 18. Here it's a little bit of an extra step. First, we need to divide everything by 2 because we still want to isolate a. So we're dividing both sides by 2, and we get a plus 7 squared equals 34. Again, we have to take the square root of both sides. And it's the positive, negative square root. You cannot forget that plus minus. And we end up with a plus 7 equals positive or negative square root of 34. This is going to give us 2 answers, as all square roots do and all quadratic equations do, unless they're the vertex or they're above the x-axis and don't interact with it or intercept it. So I'm going to end up with 2 answers here. A equals negative 7 plus the square root of 34, and a equals negative 7 minus the square root of 34. And when I work out both of those answers, I end up with a equals negative 11.12 over here, and over here negative 2.88. And that covers everything through 10.4. I would urge you to make sure that you do all of the odds and check your work. And we're going to go on to 10.5.